David Martinez wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished loading the last box of fresh flowers into his small delivery truck. The morning sun was already getting hot, and he knew it would be another long day ahead. His flower shop, blooming, Dreams, sat on a quiet corner of the city, far from the busy business district where all the important people worked. At 35, David had been running the shop for 8 years, ever since his wife Maria passed away from cancer. Those had been the hardest days of his life, watching the woman he loved fight a battle she couldn't win. The medical bills had eaten up most of their savings, and now he struggled every month to pay rent and keep food on the table for his 10-year-old daughter, Sophia. Sophia was the light of his life. She had her mother's bright smile and curious nature, but she also had a wisdom that seemed too old for her young age. Every day after school, she would come straight to the flower shop, doing her homework at the small desk David had set up for her in the back room. She never complained about their simple life or asked for expensive toys like other kids her age. "Papa, why do you always look so worried when you count the money?" Sophia asked one evening as David sat at their kitchen table surrounded by bills and receipts. David looked up at his daughter, who was eating a simple dinner of rice and beans. He tried to smile, but she could see the stress in his eyes. "It's nothing for you to worry about, mi amor. Papa is just trying to figure out how to grow the business." Sophia nodded thoughtfully. She was smart enough to understand that money was tight, even though her father tried to hide it from her. She had heard him talking on the phone with the landlord, asking for more time to pay the rent. She had seen him skip meals so she could have seconds. She had noticed how he wore the same 3 shirts over and over because he couldn't afford new clothes. The next morning, Sophia walked to school with her best friend Jenny, whose mother worked as a secretary at Morrison Industries, the biggest company in the city. Jenny was always talking about the fancy office building where her mother worked and the important people who walked through the halls in expensive suits. "My mom says the CEO, Victoria Morrison, is the richest woman in the whole city," Jenny said as they approached the school gates. "She owns like 100 buildings and drives a car that costs more than most people's houses." Sophia listened with interest. She had heard the name Victoria Morrison before. Everyone in the city knew about her. She was young for a CEO, only 32, and had taken over the company when her father retired. People said she was brilliant but also very cold and focused only on business. That afternoon, Sophia sat in the flower shop doing her math homework while her father arranged a small bouquet for a regular customer. The shop was quiet, as it usually was. Most people bought their flowers from the big grocery stores now, which sold them cheaper, but without the personal touch that David provided. "Papa," Sophia said, looking up from her worksheet, "what kind of flowers do rich people like?" David paused in his work. "Why do you ask, sweetheart?" "I was just thinking. If we could sell flowers to rich people, maybe we wouldn't have to worry about money so much." David smiled at his daughter's innocent logic. "Rich people usually have their own gardens, Sophia. They don't need to buy flowers from shops like ours." But Sophia wasn't convinced. She had an idea forming in her mind, though she wasn't ready to share it with her father yet. That night, she lay in bed thinking about Victoria Morrison and wondering what kind of person she really was behind all the stories people told. The next day at school, Sophia paid extra attention when Jenny talked about her mother's job. She learned that Victoria Morrison worked very long hours and rarely left her office on the top floor of the Morrison Industries building. She learned that Victoria had never been married and lived alone in a big house outside the city. Most importantly, she learned that Victoria's office had huge windows but no plants or flowers to brighten up the space. "My mom says Ms. Morrison is all business all the time," Jenny explained during lunch. "She doesn't seem to care about anything except work and making money." Sophia thought this sounded very sad. Everyone needed beauty in their life, even successful businesswomen, especially successful businesswomen who spent all day in offices looking at numbers and reports. That evening, Sophia helped her father close up the shop. As they walked home together, she noticed how tired he looked. His shoulders were bent with worry, and she could see new gray hairs appearing at his temples. She made a decision that would change both their lives. "Papa," she said carefully, What if I told you I had an idea to help the business? David looked down at his daughter with amusement. Oh, really? And what would this idea be? Sophia took a deep breath. What if we could get the richest person in the city to become our customer? Someone who could afford to buy lots of flowers, and maybe even recommend us to their friends? David chuckled softly. That's a nice dream, Sophia. But rich people don't shop at places like our little flower shop. They have people who do their shopping for them, and those people go to the fancy florists in the expensive part of town. But what if we brought the flowers to them instead? Sophia persisted. What if we showed them how beautiful our flowers are and how much love Papa puts into every arrangement? David stopped walking and knelt down to look at his daughter at eye level. Sophia, I appreciate that you want to help, but the world doesn't work that way. Rich people and poor people live in different worlds. They don't mix. Sophia looked into her father's kind but tired eyes and felt more determined than ever. She might be only 10 years old, but she had her mother's stubborn streak and her father's generous heart. If adults couldn't see possibilities, maybe it was up to a child to show them the way. That night, Sophia began planning her strategy. She would find a way to bring her father's beautiful flowers to Victoria Morrison's attention. She didn't know exactly how yet, but she was determined to try. Her father deserved happiness and success, and Sophia believed that sometimes the most unlikely connections could lead to the most wonderful surprises. The city's most powerful CEO was about to meet her match in a 10-year-old girl with a heart full of hope and a plan that just might work. Sophia spent the next week observing and planning. Every day after school, she would walk past the Morrison Industries building, a gleaming tower of glass and steel that reached toward the clouds. The building intimidated most people, but Sophia saw it as a challenge waiting to be conquered. She watched the people going in and out of the building. Men and women in sharp business suits hurried through the revolving doors, their faces serious and focused. Security guards stood at attention in the marble lobby, and Sophia could see through the glass walls that everything inside looked expensive and cold. On Friday afternoon, Sophia convinced Jenny to take her to the building's food court in the basement, which was open to the public. Jenny's mother worked late that day, so the girls had time to explore. Sophia's eyes went wide as she saw the underground shopping area filled with fancy restaurants and coffee shops, where business people grabbed quick meals between meetings. There she is, Jenny whispered, pointing toward a woman in a perfectly tailored navy blue suit walking quickly through the food court. That's Victoria Morrison. Sophia stared at the CEO with fascination. Victoria Morrison was smaller than she had imagined, probably not much taller than Sophia's father. She had dark hair pulled back in a tight bun and moved with the confidence of someone who owned the world around her. But there was something else Sophia noticed that others might have missed. Victoria's shoulders were tense, and despite her powerful appearance, there was a loneliness in her eyes that reminded Sophia of her father when he thought no one was looking. Victoria walked alone, surrounded by the buzz of activity, but not really part of it. She bought a simple salad and coffee from one of the vendors and sat by herself at a corner table, reviewing documents while she ate. Sophia watched as other business people glanced at Victoria with respect and fear, but no one approached her table to say hello or ask how her day was going. She looks so lonely, Sophia whispered to Jenny. Lonely. She's the most powerful person in the city, Jenny replied. She doesn't need friends. She has money. But Sophia saw something different. She saw a woman who had everything except the simple joys that made life beautiful. No flowers on her desk, no personal photos visible in her hands, no warm smile for the people around her. Sophia's heart went out to this successful but isolated woman. That weekend, Sophia put her plan into action. She woke up early and went to the flower shop with her father, as she always did on Saturdays. While David arranged the weekly delivery orders, Sophia carefully selected the most beautiful flowers from their inventory. She chose white roses for elegance, purple orchids for uniqueness, and baby's breath to add softness and light. "What are you making, sweetheart?" David asked, noticing his daughter's careful attention to detail. "Just practicing," Sophia said, not quite ready to reveal her plan. "Papa, can you teach me how to make a really special arrangement?" Something that would make someone feel happy even if they were having a bad day? David smiled and came over to help his daughter. For the next hour, he taught her about color balance, flower placement, and how to create arrangements that told a story. Sophia was a quick learner and had inherited her father's natural eye for beauty. Flowers are like emotions, David explained as they worked together. They can say things that words cannot. This white rose represents new beginnings. These purple orchids show that someone is special and unique. The baby's breath reminds us that even small, delicate things can make everything around them more beautiful. Sophia nodded seriously, memorizing every word. She was learning more than just flower arranging. She was learning her father's philosophy of bringing joy to others through his art. On Monday morning, Sophia asked her father for permission to take a small arrangement to school for a class project about careers. David was happy to see his daughter interested in the family business and carefully packed a lovely bouquet for her to carry. But instead of taking the flowers to school, Sophia walked straight to the Morrison Industries building. Her heart was pounding as she approached the security desk in the marble lobby. The guard looked down at her with surprise and suspicion. "I'm sorry, little girl, but children aren't allowed in the building without an adult," the guard said firmly. Sophia had expected this. She put on her most polite smile and held up the flower arrangement. "I'm not trying to go upstairs, sir. I just wanted to leave these flowers for Ms. Victoria Morrison. My papa made them special, and I thought she might like them." The guard looked confused. In all his years working in the building, no one had ever brought flowers for the CEO, especially not a 10-year-old child. "You can't just leave flowers here, kid. We have security procedures." "Could you please call her office and ask?" Sophia requested sweetly. "I promise I'm not trying to cause any trouble. I just think everyone deserves to have beautiful flowers to look at." The guard was touched by the child's sincerity but still had to follow protocol. "I'll tell you what. I can take your name and the flowers, and I'll make sure they get to the right department. But I can't promise Ms. Morrison will see them personally." Sophia carefully wrote out a note on a small card that came with the arrangement. In her neat handwriting, she wrote, "Dear Ms. Morrison, my papa makes the most beautiful flowers in the city, and I thought you might like these to brighten your office. Sometimes when we're working hard, we forget to notice the beautiful things around us. I hope these remind you that there's always something lovely to discover. From your friend, Sophia Martinez." The guard took the flowers and the note, still shaking his head in amazement. After Sophia left, he stood there for a moment looking at the arrangement. It really was beautiful. Much nicer than the expensive flowers the company usually ordered for special events. The colors were perfect, and there was something warm and personal about it that the fancy arrangements lacked. Sophia walked to school that day with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She had taken the first step in her plan, but she had no way of knowing if Victoria Morrison would even see the flowers, much less respond to them. All she could do was hope that sometimes the simplest gestures could touch the hardest hearts. Meanwhile, in her office on the 40th floor, Victoria Morrison was about to receive a surprise that would challenge everything she thought she knew about success, loneliness, and the unexpected places where friendship could bloom. Victoria Morrison sat at her massive mahogany desk, surrounded by financial reports and contract proposals that demanded her immediate attention. The afternoon sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of her corner office, but she barely noticed the view of the city sprawling below her. Her assistant knocked on the door, interrupting her concentration on quarterly profit margins. "Ms. Morrison, security sent up a flower arrangement that was left for you in the lobby," her assistant said, carrying the bouquet Sophia had carefully selected. "There's a note attached." Victoria looked up with confusion. In her 8 years as CEO, she had never received personal flowers at the office. Corporate arrangements for special events, yes, but never something personal with her name on it. "Who sent them?" "The note says they're from someone named Sophia Martinez," her assistant replied, setting the arrangement on a side table. "Should I have security investigate?" Victoria waved her hand dismissively. "That won't be necessary, just leave them there." After her assistant left, Victoria found herself distracted by the colorful bouquet sitting across the room. The flowers were arranged with obvious skill and care, very different from the formal, expensive arrangements the company usually received. These flowers seemed to radiate warmth and personality. Curiosity finally got the better of her. Victoria walked over and picked up the small note card, reading Sophia's message carefully. She read it twice, then a third time. No one had ever told her that she deserved beautiful things or suggested that she should take time to notice lovely surprises around her. The message was innocent and kind in a way that Victoria hadn't experienced in years. She found herself studying the arrangement more closely. The white roses were perfect, without a single wilted petal. The purple orchids were exotic and unusual, chosen by someone who understood that ordinary flowers wouldn't make the right impression. The baby's breath added a delicate touch that softened the overall effect without making it seem weak or feminine in a way that might be inappropriate for her office. For the first time in months, Victoria smiled a genuine smile. Whoever this Sophia Martinez was, she had excellent taste and a thoughtful heart. The flowers brightened the sterile office environment in a way that Victoria hadn't realized was needed. That evening, Victoria did something she rarely did. Instead of working late at the office, she went home to her large empty house and found herself thinking about the mysterious flower sender. She looked up the name Martinez in the city directory and found several listings, but none specifically mentioned flowers or florists. The next morning, Victoria surprised herself by asking her assistant to do some research. Find out if there's a florist named Martinez anywhere in the city. I'd like to know more about who sent those flowers. Her assistant returned within an hour with information about Blooming Dreams Flower Shop and its owner, David Martinez. Victoria learned that it was a small family business that had been struggling financially, but had a reputation for beautiful, personalized arrangements. Victoria stared at the report, feeling something she hadn't experienced in years. When was the last time someone had done something kind for her without wanting anything in return? When was the last time she had received a gift that was given simply to brighten her day? Meanwhile, Sophia checked with Jenny every day to see if there had been any response to her flower delivery. After a week of silence, she began to worry that her plan wasn't working. Maybe Victoria Morrison was too busy and important to notice. Flowers from a small girl in her father's shop. But Sophia wasn't ready to give up. On the following Monday, she prepared another arrangement with her father's help. This time she chose yellow sunflowers for happiness, white daisies for innocence, and green eucalyptus leaves for freshness and new growth. "You're getting very good at this," David commented as he watched his daughter work. "These arrangements are as beautiful as anything I could make." Sophia beamed with pride but still didn't tell her father about her secret mission. She was afraid he might try to stop her, or worry that she was bothering important people who wouldn't want to be interrupted by a child's innocent gestures. This time, when Sophia approached the security desk at Morrison Industries, the same guard recognized her. "Back with more flowers, I see," he said with a knowing smile. "You know, I've been working here for 12 years, and I've never seen anyone brighten up this place like you did with those last flowers." "Did Ms. Morrison like them?" Sophia asked hopefully. The guard winked at her. "Let me put it this way, kid. She kept them on her desk all week, and I've never seen her keep anything personal in that office before. I think you might be onto something." Encouraged by this news, Sophia wrote another note to accompany the second arrangement. "Dear Ms. Morrison, I hope the first flowers made you smile. My papa says that flowers are like emotions that can say things words cannot. These sunflowers are for happiness, and the daisies are to remind you that simple things can be the most beautiful. I hope you're having a wonderful week. Your friend, Sophia Martinez." This time, Victoria was expecting the delivery. She had found herself looking forward to seeing what creative combination the mysterious Sophia would send next. When the sunflowers arrived, Victoria actually laughed out loud. The arrangement was bold and cheerful, impossible to ignore or dismiss. Victoria decided it was time to solve the mystery. She called her driver and gave him the address of Blooming Dreams Flower Shop. "I want to see this place for myself," she told him. That afternoon, Victoria Morrison's luxury car pulled up outside David's small flower shop. Victoria stepped out wearing a simple black dress and sunglasses, trying to blend in with the neighborhood. Through the shop window, she could see a man with gentle hands carefully arranging flowers while a young girl sat at a desk in the background, doing homework. Victoria watched for several minutes, observing the obvious love and care that David put into every arrangement. She could see that this was not just a business for him. It was an art form and a way of bringing beauty into the world. The shop was clean but clearly struggling financially, with only a few customers coming and going during the time she observed. The girl looked up from her homework and smiled at her father, and Victoria realized this must be Sophia. She was smaller than Victoria had imagined, with dark hair like her father's and bright, intelligent eyes that seemed to take in everything around her with curiosity and hope. Victoria felt an unexpected warmth in her chest as she watched the father and daughter work together in their small but loving world. This was what she had been missing in her own life, not just success and power, but connection and purpose beyond money and business deals. She returned to her car without going into the shop, but her mind was made up. Sophia Martinez had given her something precious without asking for anything in return. It was time for Victoria to return the favor, but she would need to be careful about how she approached this delicate situation. Victoria Morrison spent the next few days thinking about what she had witnessed at the flower shop. The image of Sophia doing her homework while her father worked late into the evening stayed with her. She recognized the signs of a family struggling to make ends meet, having grown up in similar circumstances before her father built the business empire she now controlled. Victoria had been born into poverty, though few people knew this about her. Her father had started with nothing and worked 18-hour days to build Morrison Industries from the ground up. Victoria had learned early that success required sacrifice and that showing weakness could destroy everything her family had worked for. But watching David Martinez's gentle care with his flowers and Sophia's bright optimism, despite their financial struggles, reminded her of qualities she had lost along the way. On Thursday morning, Victoria made a decision that surprised even herself. Instead of sending her assistant to handle the matter, she personally called Blooming Dreams Flower Shop. David was arranging a small wedding bouquet when the phone rang. Sophia was at school, so he answered it himself, wiping his hands on his apron before picking up the receiver. Blooming Dreams, this is David speaking. How can I help you? Hello, Mr. Martinez. This is Victoria Morrison from Morrison Industries. I believe your daughter has been sending flowers to my office. David's heart stopped. His face went pale as he gripped the phone tighter. Ms. Morrison, I had no idea. I'm so sorry if Sophia has been bothering you. She's just a child, and sometimes she gets ideas. Mr. Martinez, please don't apologize. Victoria interrupted gently. Your daughter hasn't been bothering me at all. In fact, her flowers have been the brightest part of my week. I was calling because I'd like to discuss a business proposition with you. David sat down heavily in his chair, still trying to process what was happening. The most powerful person in the city was calling his little flower shop, and somehow Sophia was involved. I've been looking for a florist to handle all of Morrison Industries' floral needs, Victoria continued. We host numerous corporate events, client meetings, and office celebrations throughout the year. The flowers Sophia has been sending demonstrate exactly the kind of quality and creativity I'm looking for. David's mind raced. Morrison Industries was the kind of client that could transform his struggling business overnight. But he was also confused about how his 10-year-old daughter had managed to connect with Victoria Morrison without his knowledge. Ms. Morrison, I appreciate your interest, but I should probably explain that our shop is quite small. I'm not sure we could handle the volume that a company like yours would require. That's exactly why I'd like to meet with you, Victoria replied. Would you be available tomorrow afternoon to discuss the details? I could come to your shop around 2 o'clock if that works for you. After hanging up the phone, David sat in stunned silence. He had no idea how Sophia had managed to contact Victoria Morrison or what she had said to create this opportunity. All he knew was that tomorrow, the most important businesswoman in the city would be visiting his small flower shop. When Sophia arrived from school that afternoon, David was waiting for her with a serious expression on his face. Sophia, we need to have a talk, he said gently. I received an interesting phone call today from someone named Victoria Morrison. Sophia's eyes went wide, and she looked both excited and nervous. She called you, Papa? Really? Yes, she did. And she mentioned that you've been sending her flowers. Sophia, how did you even know how to find her? And why didn't you tell me what you were doing? Sophia sat down across from her father, her hands folded in her lap. She had known this conversation would come eventually, but she hadn't been sure how to explain her plan. Papa, I saw how worried you were about money. I heard you talking to the landlord and saw you skipping meals so I could eat. I wanted to help, but I knew you would say I was too young or that rich people don't care about shops like ours. David's heart ached as he realized how much his daughter had been observing and worrying about their situation. Sophia, you shouldn't have to worry about these things. You're just a child. But I'm not just any child, Papa. I'm your child, and that means your problems are my problems too, Sophia said with a maturity that surprised him. I thought if I could show Ms. Morrison how beautiful your flowers are, maybe she would want to buy some. I never expected her to call you directly. David looked at his daughter with a mixture of pride and amazement. What did you say to her? In those notes you sent? Sophia told him about her visits to the Morrison Industries building and the messages she had written. David listened with growing admiration for his daughter's courage and determination. You know, David said finally, your mother would have been so proud of you. She always said you had her stubborn streak and my romantic heart. Do you think Ms. Morrison really wants to buy flowers from us? Sophia asked hopefully. She's coming here tomorrow to discuss it, David replied. But Sophia, you have to understand that this kind of opportunity comes with a lot of pressure. If we can't deliver what she expects, it could hurt our reputation. Sophia nodded seriously. Papa, I believe in you. Your flowers are the most beautiful in the city. Ms. Morrison will see that too. The next afternoon, Victoria Morrison's car pulled up in front of Blooming Dreams exactly at 2 o'clock. David had spent the morning cleaning every corner of the shop and preparing his best arrangements for display. Sophia had insisted on staying home from school to meet the woman who had received her flowers. When Victoria stepped through the door, both David and Sophia were struck by how different she seemed from the powerful CEO they had imagined. She was dressed simply in a cream-colored blouse and dark pants, and her smile was warm and genuine. Mr. Martinez, it's wonderful to meet you, Victoria said, extending her hand. And you must be Sophia. I've been looking forward to meeting the young lady who has such excellent taste in flowers. Sophia beamed with pride and shook Victoria's hand with all the politeness her father had taught her. Thank you for liking my papa's flowers, Ms. Morrison. He works really hard to make them perfect. Victoria looked around the shop, taking in the carefully arranged displays and the obvious love that had gone into creating this small oasis of beauty. She could smell the fresh scent of roses and jasmine, and she noticed how clean and organized everything was despite the shop's modest size. Your arrangements are exceptional, Victoria told David sincerely. I can see why Sophia is so proud of your work. The flowers she sent to my office were more beautiful than anything I've received from the expensive florists downtown. As they talked about the possibility of Morrison Industries becoming a regular customer, Victoria found herself relaxing in a way she rarely did during business meetings. There was something genuine and unpretentious about David and Sophia that reminded her of values she had almost forgotten in her climb to success. Sophia watched the conversation with growing excitement, seeing her secret plan finally coming together. But she also noticed something else happening. Her father's worried expression was fading, replaced by the confident smile she remembered from before their financial troubles began. And Victoria Morrison, despite her reputation for being cold and businesslike, seemed to genuinely enjoy their company. Sophia began to wonder if her flower plan might accomplish something even more important than saving the family business. Maybe, just maybe, it could bring together two lonely people who needed each other more than they realized. The business arrangement between Victoria Morrison and Blooming Dreams began immediately. Within a week, David received his first large order: arrangements for Morrison Industries' quarterly board meeting, a client appreciation dinner, and weekly fresh flowers for the executive offices. The payment for just that first order was more than David usually made in 3 months. But something unexpected was happening alongside the business relationship. Victoria found herself stopping by the flower shop more often than necessary, sometimes just to check on orders, but increasingly to enjoy the peaceful atmosphere and genuine conversation that the shop provided. "You don't have to come in person every time," David told her one afternoon as she inspected a centerpiece arrangement for an upcoming corporate event. "I could have these delivered directly to your office." Victoria looked up from the flowers, realizing she had been caught making excuses to visit. "I know, but I like seeing the creative process. Besides, your shop is the most relaxing place I visit all week." Sophia watched these interactions with growing interest. She noticed how her father's face lit up when Victoria walked through the door, and how Victoria's formal business manner softened when she talked with him about flowers and design. They had more in common than either of them seemed to realize. One evening, as David and Sophia were closing up the shop, Victoria arrived just as they were turning off the lights. She looked embarrassed about the timing. "I'm sorry, I know you're closing. I was just driving by and wanted to check on tomorrow's delivery schedule," she said apologetically. "Please come in," David insisted. Sophia and I were just finishing up. As the three of them stood in the shop surrounded by the evening scent of roses and lilies, Victoria found herself sharing something personal. "You know, I haven't been in a flower shop since I was Sophia's age. My mother used to take me to a little place like this when I was young, before my father's business took off and we moved to the other side of the city." "What was your favorite flower then?" Sophia asked with genuine curiosity. Victoria smiled at the memory. "Pink carnations. My mother said they represented a mother's love, and she would buy me one every time we visited the shop. I carried pink carnations in my bouquet when I graduated from college in her memory." David and Sophia exchanged a meaningful look. The next morning, David prepared a special small arrangement of pink carnations and had Sophia deliver it to Victoria's office, with a note that read, "Some flowers are worth remembering. We hope these bring back happy thoughts. From your friends at Blooming Dreams." When Victoria received the carnations, she was so moved that she had to excuse herself from a board meeting to compose herself. No one had ever paid attention to such a small detail about her personal history, and no one had ever thought to honor her mother's memory with such a thoughtful gesture. That evening, Victoria did something she hadn't done in years. She called David's shop just as he was closing, not about business, but just to thank him for the carnations. "David, I wanted you to know how much those flowers meant to me today," she said, her voice softer than he had ever heard it. "Sophia actually suggested them," David replied. "She said everyone should have flowers that remind them of people they love." "Your daughter is very wise," Victoria said. "She sees things that adults often miss." Their conversation continued for over an hour, ranging from flowers to family memories to dreams they had almost forgotten. David found himself telling Victoria about his late wife and how much he missed having someone to share his thoughts with at the end of each day. Victoria spoke about the loneliness of success and how she sometimes wondered what her life would have been like if she had chosen a different path. Sophia listened from her bedroom, where she was supposedly doing homework, but was actually eavesdropping on her father's phone conversation. She could hear the happiness in his voice, a lightness that had been missing since her mother died. Over the next few weeks, Victoria's visits to the flower shop became a regular part of her routine. She would stop by after work, ostensibly to discuss upcoming orders, but really to unwind from her stressful days and enjoy the peaceful environment David had created. Sometimes she would arrive to find Sophia doing homework at her little desk, and Victoria began helping with math problems and school projects. Sophia was delighted to have someone new to talk to, especially someone as smart and successful as Victoria. "Ms. Morrison," Sophia said one afternoon while Victoria was helping her with a geography assignment, "why don't you have any kids of your own?" David looked up from his work, worried that his daughter's question might be too personal, but Victoria didn't seem offended. "I always thought I was too busy for a family," Victoria answered honestly. "I believed that success meant focusing only on work and not getting distracted by personal relationships." "But don't you get lonely?" Sophia asked with the innocent directness that only children possess. Victoria glanced at David, who was pretending not to listen to their conversation. Yes, sometimes I do get lonely. But spending time here with you and your father has reminded me that the best parts of life aren't always about business and money. David's heart skipped a beat at her words, and he found himself hoping that Victoria's feelings for their little family were becoming as strong as his feelings for her. One evening, as the three of them were arranging flowers for a wedding order, Sophia made an announcement that surprised both adults. "Papa, I think you should ask Ms. Morrison to have dinner with us at home," she said matter-of-factly. "She's been eating alone in that big house for too long, and we have that nice chicken recipe that Mama used to make." David's face turned red with embarrassment. "Sophia, you can't just invite people to dinner without asking me first." But Victoria was smiling. "Actually, that sounds wonderful. I can't remember the last time someone invited me to a home-cooked meal." David looked back and forth between his daughter and Victoria, realizing that Sophia's matchmaking plan was working better than he could have imagined. The shy florist and the powerful CEO were discovering that underneath their different circumstances, they were both people looking for connection, understanding, and love. "Well then," David said with a nervous but hopeful smile, "I guess we're having dinner together tomorrow night." Sophia grinned triumphantly. Her plan to help her father's business had succeeded beyond her wildest dreams. But she was beginning to realize that she might have also helped two lonely people find something even more valuable than financial security. The dinner that Sophia had orchestrated turned out to be the beginning of something beautiful that none of them had expected. Victoria arrived at David and Sophia's modest apartment, carrying a bottle of wine and looking nervous in a way that her business associates would never have recognized. She had changed from her usual power suits into a simple green dress that made her look younger and more approachable. David had spent the entire day cooking his late wife's chicken recipe, the one that had always filled their home with warmth and comfort. Sophia had set the table with their best dishes and picked fresh flowers from the shop to create a centerpiece that rivaled any expensive restaurant arrangement. "This is lovely," Victoria said as she looked around their small but cozy home. The walls were decorated with Sophia's school artwork and family photos, creating an atmosphere of love and belonging that Victoria's large, empty house completely lacked. During dinner, conversation flowed naturally between the three of them. Victoria told stories about her business travels and the interesting people she had met around the world. David shared memories of building his flower shop and the early days of his marriage when he and Maria had dreamed of growing their business. Together, Sophia entertained them both with tales from school and her observations about the various customers who visited the shop. "You know," Victoria said as they finished the main course, "I haven't laughed this much in years. You two have created something special here." Sophia beamed with pride, but she wasn't finished with her matchmaking efforts. "Ms. Morrison, would you like to see the photo albums from when my mama was alive? Papa has lots of pictures of their wedding, and Mama was holding flowers just like the ones you make, Papa." David looked uncertain, but Victoria nodded with genuine interest. "I'd love to see them if you don't mind sharing those memories." As they looked through the photo albums together, Victoria saw a younger David with eyes full of hope and love, standing next to a beautiful woman who clearly adored him. The wedding photos showed elaborate flower arrangements that demonstrated David's artistic talent even in those early days. "She was beautiful," Victoria said softly, looking at pictures of Sophia's mother. "Sophia looks just like her." "She had the kindest heart," David replied, his voice filled with both sadness and fondness. "Maria always believed that everyone deserved to be surrounded by beautiful things regardless of how much money they had. That's why she encouraged me to keep our prices affordable, even when business was slow." Victoria felt a deep respect for a woman she had never met, but who had clearly shaped the values of the man and child she was growing to care about so much. Later that evening, after Sophia had gone to bed, David and Victoria sat on the small balcony, overlooking the city lights, sharing coffee and continuing their conversation in quiet voices. "David, can I ask you something personal?" Victoria said, setting down her coffee cup. "Of course. Do you ever think about finding love again? I mean, it's clear that you and Maria had something special, but you're still young. Don't you want companionship?" David was quiet for a long moment, considering his answer carefully. For a long time, I thought that loving Maria meant never allowing anyone else into my heart. But lately, I've been wondering if maybe she would want Sophia and me to have more people to care about. Victoria felt her heart racing, sensing that they were approaching something significant. And what conclusion have you reached? David looked at her directly, his brown eyes reflecting the soft light from their living room. I think that love isn't something you run out of when you give it away. I think it grows bigger when you share it with the right people. Victoria reached across the small table and touched his hand gently. I've spent so many years thinking that success meant being independent and not needing anyone. But being here, with you and Sophia, has shown me that the most successful life might actually be one filled with people who care about each other. Their first kiss happened naturally, softly, under the stars that twinkled above the city where they had both struggled and dreamed in their own ways. It was a kiss that promised new beginnings without dishonoring the past, hope without abandoning responsibility, and love without conditions or expectations. 3 months later, Victoria made an announcement that shocked the business community, but delighted everyone who knew the real story. She was relocating Morrison Industries' headquarters to a new building that included retail space on the ground floor, and the anchor tenant would be an expanded version of Blooming Dreams Flower Shop. Ms. Morrison, are you sure about this partnership? One of her board members asked during a meeting. It's quite unusual for a CEO to have such personal involvement with a vendor. Victoria smiled confidently. Sometimes the best business decisions are also the most personal ones. David Martinez is not just a vendor, he's going to be family. David and Victoria's engagement announcement appeared in the city newspaper's business section, but Sophia insisted that the real celebration should be held in the flower shop, surrounded by the beauty that had brought them all together. On their wedding day 6 months later, Sophia walked down the aisle as the flower girl, scattering rose petals that her father had grown specially for the occasion. Victoria carried a bouquet of white roses, purple orchids, and baby's breath, the same combination that Sophia had chosen for that first arrangement that started everything. The wedding was small, but perfect, held in the garden behind their new home where David could grow flowers and Victoria could escape from the pressures of running her business empire. Sophia had a new stepmother who helped with homework, attended school plays, and taught her that dreams could come true when you had the courage to take the first step. As they danced at their reception, Victoria whispered to David, "Your daughter is remarkable." She saw something that 2 adults were too scared to see for themselves. David spun his new wife gently and smiled at Sophia, who was dancing with Victoria's father and telling him all about her matchmaking strategy. Sophia always said that flowers could say things that words couldn't. I guess she was right about people, too. Victoria laughed and pulled both David and Sophia into a family hug. I used to think that success meant having power over other people, but now I know that real success means having people who love you enough to believe in your happiness, even when you don't believe in it yourself. Sophia looked up at her father and new stepmother with satisfaction. Her plan to help her father's flower business had worked perfectly, but more importantly, she had helped create a family where everyone belonged and no one had to be lonely anymore. The flower shop thrived in its new location, becoming famous throughout the city, not just for beautiful arrangements but for the love story that had bloomed there. And every day, Sophia continued to learn about flowers, business, and the magic that happens when people are brave enough to show kindness to strangers who might become family. Years later, when Sophia was grown and running her own successful business, she would still credit those first flower deliveries to Victoria's office as the moment she learned that the smallest gestures, made with love and hope, could change the entire course of people's lives.